In this topic, we'll be implementing the sprint ability. When I begin sprinting, you'll notice in the debug information that I have a movement speed of 200 and its base value being 100. Technically, it's being multiplied by 2 by a particular effect, and you'll also notice that my stamina is being periodically consumed. Yeah, I know the animation looks funny. It's actually from the Paragon assets, from the Gideon character, and when I collide with a wall or any obstruction, my sprint ability ends. So not only that, it's not going to be possible to be able to invoke sprint while standing in one place or having a very low speed. So technically, the character must be running in order to sprint. And also, if the stamina is completely consumed, the sprint ability shall end, and no matter how many times I attempt to sprint, the sprint ability will not be invoked because I don't have the required stamina. In the first step, I shall procure the animations for sprinting. I shall be using the Paragon Gideon's animations, which I had imported from the Epic Games Paragon assets. And in my content directory's Paragon Gideon folder, I shall search for sprint, and I found the travel mode sprint animation, and the same can be used for our Unreal Engine mannequin skeleton. In my base folders, assets and animations folder, I had created a sprint folder, and I shall copy this animation sequence into the sprint folder. I shall right click on this animation sequence and choose the replace skeleton option. In here, I will choose my SK mannequin skeleton, and so the Gideon character has been replaced by the Unreal Engine's mannequin. I shall also create the animation montage out of this animation sequence. So if I open up this animation montage, I'll notice that the Unreal Engine mannequin is sprinting in a similar manner as Gideon did. You might choose whichever animation you'd like, perhaps from Mixamo or anywhere else, and this will be the animation for this character's sprinting. And this animation shall play in the default body slot. In the second step, we'll be implementing the sprint ability. In my ability systems abilities folder, I have created the gameplay ability sprint blueprint class. So I've used the movement.sprint tag in the ability tags to label this ability. I've used the combat.block and combat.melee tags in the block abilities with tag property, and this shall block abilities containing any one of these tags, combat.block or combat.melee. And I've used the movement.sprint tag into the activation owned tags property. So technically, the avatar actor that invokes the sprint ability will be granted the movement.sprint tag. I have set the instancing policy to be instanced per actor, and I'm also using an ability cost, which is a gameplay effect. This effect is stored in my base folder's ability system effects and sprint folder alongside other sprint effects. So this gameplay effect, sprint cost, is an infinite effect. That is, it will last on the AC actor indefinitely, and it modifies the attribute in a periodic interval of 0.2 seconds. So technically, every 0.2 seconds, I'll be consuming -2 stamina. This is equivalent to 10 points of stamina per second. I'll also use the movement.sprint tag in the application tag requirements property. So technically, if this effect has to be applied, then the ASC actor of this effect must contain this movement.sprint tag, which is actually granted during the activation of the sprint ability. If the tag doesn't exist, this effect will fail to apply. I've also set the stacking type to be aggregated by source and the maximum stack count of 1. This movement.sprint tag had been added into my tags movement JSON file, and this JSON file has a new tag movement.sprint.end, which is used for the event to end a sprint or a dash ability. And now in the activate ability event, I'm doing a sequence of steps Firstly, I'm trying to increase the character's maximum walk speed. This is done by getting the avatar actor from the actor info, casting it to character, and attempting to get the character movement, which has a property max walk speed. This max walk speed for the moment is just going to get an increment of 1000 units over its current max speed. But in reality, you should actually be applying a sprint gameplay effect to this avatar actor. This gameplay effect sprint is technically an instant but an infinite effect, that is, an infinite effect with no periodic tick. And this is where you can easily modify the character's movement speed using the movement speed attribute. So for now, I shall just multiply by 2. But in this topic, this effect has no effect, pun unintended. This effect does not really take place because we have not configured our character's walk speed to be modified based on the movement speed attribute. That shall be done in a future topic, and we shall understand why it's not good to loosely add or multiply a value directly to the character movement speed. As in the case of the gameplay ability sprint cost, I will also be adding the movement.sprint tag into the application tag requirements property. So this effect will be applied if this sprint ability grants the movement.sprint tag. Also made sure to aggregate by source with a stack limit count of 1. So this effect is the right way for any of your game project to actually be modifying the movement speed using a movement speed attribute, maybe as in Dota or League of Legends or Smite. And this is actually the wrong way of increasing the character's speed during sprinting. So I shall now commit the ability cost, and in the next step, I shall play the sprint animation using the play montage and wait ability task. I shall search for the travel mode sprint montage that I had acquired recently. And if this animation has been interrupted or cancelled, then through these event delegates, I shall cancel the ability. I shall also use this helpful parameter stop when ability ends to stop this animation if at all this sprint ability ends. And finally, I shall also listen to an event movement.sprint.end, where upon receiving this event, I shall end this ability. This can be helpful to broadcast an event from maybe my input when I release or toggle off the sprint input key. We shall now grant this ability to the hero character. The Blueprint hero class in its ability system category has a property initial ability container. You can use the add element to add a new key value pair, the key being an ability slot identified by a gameplay tag, and the value being gameplay ability sprint. In my base player controller Blueprint class, I will invoke this ability as I had done with the combat invocations in the combat comment section. I've also made the movement section where using the debug key X, I can invoke the sprint ability. I shall get the controlled pawn, cast it to the base character, and from the base character, I shall get the initial ability container. From this initial ability container, I shall find the ability slot movement.sprint, and if I have found that slot, I shall use the value ability class to try activate the ability, and when I release the X button, I shall end the sprint ability rather than having to query for the ability class. For this, I shall use the send gameplay event to actor, where I'll be sending the event movement.sprint.end. And so, let me test this gameplay ability sprint. The animation is being played and my movement speed is faster. The movement speed attribute is also doubled. But even after consuming all of the stamina, my sprint ability has not ended. And after releasing the X key, I have been able to stop playing the animation, but the gameplay effect sprint still lingers. So technically, there are certain operations to do when sprint ends. The sprint movement speed must be reversed. This can be tricky because if we attempt to reverse the movement speed the way we did, that is by subtracting the same value of 1000, then it's going to be very error prone and quite buggy, because there could have been many other movement speed effects that could have led to a gain or a loss in the movement speed before I decrement a fixed value of 1000, and this can lead to an inaccurate resetting of sprint. So Gas has a way of snapshotting values at the time of applying the effect, and this helps in reversing the effect value accurately. In this step, we'll learn how to end the sprintability. This will be done in the event onEndability, and I shall set the character's maximum walk speed, and I shall just subtract 1000 units from the character's current max speed. So this is technically where I'm reversing the increased movement speed. I will also attempt to end the sprint animation ability task. I shall also manually remove the sprint effect using the remove gameplay effect from owner with handle method of the gameplay ability class. This method requires the active gameplay effect handle, which has been obtained at the time of applying the sprint effect during the activation itself. And -1 stacks means removing all of the stacks of that effect. This can also be done using the remove active gameplay effect method from the ability system component object. This also requires the active gameplay effect handle, and that has been obtained from an array of active gameplay effects that have been got using something known as the gameplay effect query. So technically, the ASC has this method to query for effects, and this returns an array of those effects. This is just for demonstration, and we shall be implementing ending of the sprint effect differently. But I would just like to show you the different means you have to remove active gameplay effects, like how you did in the last topic in C++. This query is technically a structure whose properties are used to match the gameplay effect in question. I have used the GESprint effect class in the effect definition property. So now the ASC's get active gameplay effects will query for that effect class and return the array of active gameplay effects. We could also use the ASC's remove active gameplay effect by source effect method, and this is very much like the blueprint version of the C++ method to remove active gameplay effect by source effect that we saw in the last topic. You can choose your desired effect to remove. Now in the gameplay effect sprint cost, which runs periodically every 0.2 seconds, I shall provide a granted tag to the ASC actor just to demonstrate how this sprint cost, if it is made to be infinite, will linger on this ASC actor even if the ability ends. Yes, this is quite weird of Gas, how it doesn't make sure to end an infinite periodic or non-periodic cost when the ability ends. Let me demonstrate how you can see the granted tag element when the sprint cost is applied. When I sprint, you can see that the granted tag element is applied to me and my stamina is still being consumed even if the sprint ability ended. So even if I activate or deactivate the sprint, the element tag has been granted and the cost has been applied. So this is a bug we want to fix in this topic, where the cost effect will be removed when sprint ends, and also the sprint gets stopped when the cost is depleted. So that is why in the gameplay effect sprint cost, I added the movement.sprint tag in the application tag requirements. That is, when the sprint is active, the movement.sprint tag is granted by the ability to the ASC actor. And only if movement.sprint tag exists on the ASC actor can this sprint cost be applied. In the similar manner, I shall add this movement.sprint tag in the ongoing tag requirements. So the ongoing tag requirements property dictates that this effect is operated only if this tag exists on the AC actor, just like the application tag requirements. So we can do the same for the ongoing tag requirements in the gameplay effect sprint as well. I shall add the movement.sprint tag, and so now the problems we have is that we are still able to sprint even if the cost has expired, and we are also able to sprint while standing in place. And also, the animation is played even if the sprint ability has ended. So we should resolve these three bugs in this step. So in the gameplay ability sprint class, in the event activate ability, I'm going to make room for more code in the event activate ability. So technically, we're going to be doing checks on the character's forward velocity and the character's cost. Basically, I've created a new custom event, check for run, and I'm using the check for run to check if the forward velocity of this character is less than 250. This can be done by getting the velocity of the avatar actor and getting the dot product of that actor's forward vector. And that pretty much gives us the forward speed. If that speed is less than or equal to 250, then we shall cancel the sprint ability. Since sprint is activated only once, we shall use a timer to run this event every 0.02 seconds on a loop. So this timer executes on both server and client. And I shall also clear and invalidate this timer by handle whenever I've been able to cancel the ability. And so the second operation would be to check for the sprint cost. And yes, for whatever reason, we do have to do this manually. It's not like gas could turn off or end an infinite periodic effect even if the cost expired. I've used the event that I created that checks sprint cost. We can use the gameplay abilities method check ability cost that returns a Boolean value that indicates if the ability cost exists or not. And so if I do not have the cost, I shall cancel the ability. And this custom event runs in a loop every 0.02 seconds. And when I have been able to cancel the ability, I shall clear and invalidate that timer handle. So in this manner, I've been able to cancel the ability, but there's a small bug here. Even if I activated the sprint ability in place, we're not sprinting, but we are playing the anim montage. So it is safe to say that we are actually not sprinting because we were not running. So that method worked and cancelled the ability. And when my stamina attribute goes down to 0, you can see that the sprint automatically ended, meaning the second operation, check for cost, worked, and that method cancelled the sprint ability. So even if I have my sprint button held, I'm not really sprinting. Neither am I able to jump as I'm pressing spacebar because I have truly exhausted my stamina cost. So there seems to be a bug with this play montage and wait ability task, where for whatever reason, even if I checked the stop when ability ends parameter, it still doesn't stop this anim montage. So I shall use a small gate, like a small Boolean check, to see if the ability system component of this avatar actor has the matching gameplay tag movement.sprint. As long as I have been granted the movement.sprint by activating the sprint ability, only then can I play this montage. So let me compile and play my level. If I stand in place and press and hold X, I'm not playing the montage. But there still seems to be this bug where if I release the sprint input action The ability has ended because of the gameplay event, but the animation is still being played. So, off the recording, I've managed to resolve this bug. Basically, for whatever reason, the end ability node is not ending the ability task, play montage and wait. Rather, this cancel ability node is able to cancel that animation montage. So in the event received delegate, I have chosen to cancel ability. I'm not ending the ability task or using the end ability method. So now when I play my level, I'm not able to sprint while standing, and when I sprint and collide with an object in the level, I have stopped playing the anim montage and my sprint has been cancelled. So even if I collide again, my sprint has been cancelled. So in that manner, we've been able to end sprint when our velocity drops to lesser than 250, end sprint when our stamina has been completely consumed, and also end sprint when our input key has been released, ending the animations and the sprint effects altogether. So in this manner, we've been able to implement the sprint ability. Let me summarize the steps in reverse. We recently debugged our code. We tried to resolve the bug where the anim montage was playing even if the sprint ability ended. This was done by using the cancel ability method in the wait gameplay events event received event listener. So whenever the sprint input key was released, this event received method was fired and the sprint ability was cancelled. I did not use the end ability method because for whatever reason was not ending the play montage and wait ability task. We resolved another bug where exhaustion of a cost in an infinite periodic gameplay effect did not end the sprint ability. This had to be done by checking for the cost using the check sprint cost event, where we use the gameplay abilities check ability cost method, and if we did not have the cost, we cancelled this ability. And before that, we resolved the first bug where we were sprinting while standing in place, or if our velocity dropped to 0. This was done using the check for run method, where we attempted to get the velocity of our avatar actor, got the forward vectors dot product to give us the forward speed, and if that speed was less than 250, less than or equal to 250, we cancelled this ability. This event happened in a loop every 0.02 seconds, so even an obstruction with an obstacle would lead to cancelling of the sprint ability. In the third step, we ended the sprint ability with certain operations. In the on-end ability event, firstly, we're removing a value of 1000 from the character's current walk speed. This is not the right way to actually reverse any value. We should be using an infinite effect. We attempted to end the animation ability task. We also attempted to manually remove the sprint effect, although this was not needed because we used the gameplay tag movement.sprint in the ongoing tag requirements of the sprint effect. This has been done in both the sprint cost and the gameplay effect sprint. Note that the ongoing tag requirement does not necessarily remove the effect. The effect still stays on the character, but the effect is turned off. So the AC actor will still have as many stacks of this effect, and those stacks of this effect are not being executed. So this was not needed in our code, and a simple tag was enough to turn off the sprint effect. And finally, we cleared and invalidated the timer handles check for run and check for cost. So that's all it really took to end the sprint ability. It's not really complicated. We just subtracted 1000 from the character's walk speed, which is still not necessary. So it seems like turning off the effect was all we need to pretty much end the sprint ability. In the second step, we implemented the sprint ability, where in the activate ability, we performed a series of operations. we checked for run in a timer loop. We checked for the sprint cost in a timer loop again. We then modified the character speed, which should be done in reality using a simple effect. This infinite effect will have no periodic interval, and the modifier I've set is to multiply the movement speed by 2. Soon after we apply the effect, we commit the ability cost to consume stamina periodically. This periodic effect is infinite, meaning it has to be manually removed when sprint ends. I'm consuming a value of 2 from stamina, which translates to minus 10 points of stamina per second. So such kind of a sprint effect is used instead of adding or removing any value directly, because it makes use of snapshotting to properly reverse any value change on the effect removal. Just like the sprint effect, the sprint cost turns off and does not execute if the ongoing tag requirement movement.sprint is not met, and this movement.sprint is being granted by this ability on its activation. So after applying the sprint effect and committing the sprint cost, we shall play the anim montage if I have the movement.sprint gameplay tag. And finally, we shall wait for the event movement.sprint.end if whenever in the game through inputs or any other event we have to end our sprint, and this event listener shall cancel this sprint ability. This sprint ability has been granted to the Blueprint hero character in its ability system categories initial ability container property. So in the slot movement.sprint, I've granted the gameplay ability sprint, and this will help me query for the slot in my player controller and activate that ability class using this control pawns ability system component. Releasing this sprint input key shall end the sprint, and this ending has been done using a gameplay event to the actor. Although the gameplay event is sent to this actor, its listener can be bound in the gameplay ability class itself, and gas under the hood will trigger this event listener. And in the very first step, we procure the animations for sprinting. We use the Paragon Assets Gideon Characters Sprint Animation. I have copied the travel mode sprint animation sequence into my project, that is in the base folders, assets, animations, sprint folder. To this copied animation sequence file, I right-clicked and chose the replace skeleton option and use the SK mannequin skeleton, which is the mannequin of Unreal Engine 4. And in the create options, create anim montage, which created the animation montage, which has been made to loop and operates on the default body slot. So yes, sprinting is not as simple as just increasing the movement speed and reversing that movement speed. It can be a little complex, where you may have to consider factors like your character's forward velocity, your character's cost, attempting to sprint while standing in place, and also reversing the appropriate value. This reversal of value has been done very efficiently in GAS, and the change in movement speed is best done using a gameplay effect. But we haven't bound the movement speed attribute to the character's walk speed in the level. In a future topic, we shall remove the addition and subtraction of this movement speed and only modify the movement speed attribute, because that is a little complicated and must be done in C++. It is beyond the scope of this video and it might get you more confused. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.